Hey, welcome to Digging into the Bible. My name is Jim Barnard. This is a production of Taylor Coaching. All right, well, it's day 43. So good to be with you. I don't know if you remember a few days ago, day 39, when Jesus was in a desolate place and he had compassion on the crowd and fed them. I said we were going to be talking about the feeding of the masses once again in a few days. Well, today's the day because Jesus is feeding the 4,000. He fed the 5,000 before. Now it's the 4,000. And there's some similarities and some differences that go beyond the number right there. But with that as the backdrop, let's go ahead and dig in to Matthew chapter 15, starting at verse 32. Then Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion on the crowd because they have been with me now 3 days and have had nothing to eat. And I am unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. And the disciples said to him, Where are we to get enough bread in such a desolate place to feed so great a crowd? And Jesus said to them, How many loaves do you have? They said, 7, and a few small fish. And directing the crowd to sit down on the ground, he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 7 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And after sending away the crowds, he got into the boat and went to the region of the Magadan. Okay, so there's some similarities, obviously. I mean, the first one is compassion and desolate. I love that Jesus has compassion on these giant crowds, and he seeks to meet their needs. Love it. That's a good similarity here. Another similarity is the desolate place. Now, I think the desolate place in the first circumstance fulfilled a point where Jesus needed solitude. And, obviously the desolate place also fulfilled the need that, Jesus had to provide for these people's needs. And in his compassion, they weren't able to go down to McDonald's or Subway to go, feed their needs. So the desolate place fit that environment really well for Jesus to meet their needs. That's the similarity there, that Jesus doesn't need solitude here. Jesus needs a desolate place that it's not easy to go and get food, so he has to provide for them. The biggest similarity, though, is that Jesus provided for their needs to the point of satisfaction. So everyone ate. He gave thanks to the Lord and tore this up, gave it to the disciples, and they passed it around. And there's probably some significance to the numbers that the first crowd and the second crowd, like how many loaves they started with and how many baskets that they were left with. There is significance to that. There's not enough time, and I don't think it's that important to get into here. But they all were able to eat until the point of satisfaction. That is amazing. To think with such a small amount of food that they were, each and every one of them were able to be satisfied. But they weren't just satisfied physically by nourishment. They were satisfied spiritually also by the words of Jesus. This crowd, this 4,000 person crowd or men crowd, they were there for 3 days. They are there for the purpose of getting spiritually fed, and it's happening, and it's so good, so satisfying. So the differences here is basically location. Location absolutely matters. On one side of the sea, where he first started off, it was the Jewish area. Those were God's people. Those were the Jews that he was meeting in that desolate place and having compassion on. And he did it. He did it well. And he satisfied their needs. And then on the other side of the sea, remember yesterday we talked about him going to the Gentile woman in the Gentile area, and the last sentence of the section that we read yesterday is so telling. It said, when they saw the mute speaking and the crippled healthy, the lame walking and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. That's notable. It's not their God that they're glorifying. They're glorifying someone else's God, the God of Israel. They're not glorifying the Gentile God, but yet they're glorifying him because, man, Jesus has come to them and met their needs spiritually and physically. And that is beautiful. There is a picture here that Matthew is painting in the feeding of the 5,000 and then the feeding of the 4,000, that Jesus starts with the Jews because they're God's people, but he's taking this beyond them. He's also going to take this to the Gentile people. I spoke yesterday about the Canaanite woman being the Jackie Robinson, spiritually speaking, of the spiritual realm. Man, things are changing. There's a new era, and here it is. This should fire you up, because this message is for you, and it's for me, and it's everything, man. So with that, I'm obviously out of time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I will see you tomorrow as we head on to Matthew chapter 16. I'll see you then.